Welcome back to Rappahannock Issues Special Edition. I'm Tom Cohen. We're continuing with our debate with the Griffis-Widewater candidates. And so let's go right back to the questions. And here's David Kerr.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And welcome back, Dylan. The schools went back to operation last week. Now all the kids are back. All the teachers are hard at work. And a lot of parents are talking about teacher to pupil ratio. In other words, how many students the teacher has. And the numbers in some places are pretty high. Remember the Board of Supervisors, what would you do? What should be done to address the issue? Jack, start with you.
Well, I think that right now, that seems to be a common theme among a lot of the parents I'm hearing from and across the board, that too many kids are in the classrooms. And I think it depends upon which classroom you're in. I don't think you can say, PE is not the same as advanced algebra, certainly. But I think we do have to get to the point where we reduce our teacher-student ratio down to the point that it's a lot lower than what it is. And how do you do that? Well, one way is to hire more teachers. And that certainly is feasible. But another way is to look at programs that you have in the schools and to revisit some of these programs that have been going on for a long time and may not be as viable today as they were when they were first started. And maybe there's some that are redundant. And I think it's time to take a good hard look at that. And I think the superintendent in particular, Dr. Benson, has promised us that he would do that. I know there's an efficiency report that recommended a lot of different changes for the school system, as well as we're now looking at shared services between schools and the county on things as easy as like field maintenance and things like any sort of functionality, HR, budgeting, contracts, those type of areas, same kind of job, just on both sides of the street. And we could combine and consolidate that. Legal arena is another one that we could save money on. So the savings realized from those kind of shared services, as well as some efficiencies and some reductions of programs, I believe, can get us to where we want to be.
Thank you, Jack. Appreciate that answer. What's your take on this question?
I believe what we're seeing is a symptom of what we've done for years, which is continue to grow without addressing our infrastructure. And so recently, like we said, we found the $8.3 million into that pot. The infrastructure, the tools that they used, if we would have that a couple of years ago, maybe we would have more teachers that we would have been able to have employed because we had the money that we found the money, or we could have utilized the money that was there. We also have to look at maybe just trying to grow at a pace that's going to beat what we need. Now, there's other things we can do. We can do what the doctor has do is look at things that's redundant, stuff like that. But I think what we have to do for us is look at some of the causes. And once we find out what the causes are, maybe slow those causes down, and then we can move forward. Our school system is still one of the better school systems. They are producing at a high level, better than most. So we have to look as supervisors how to continue that growth without having disruption of the quality of life of the kids. And that's something that we have to do.
Good answer. This is another school question. It has to do with the relationship between the Board of Supervisors and the Stafford County School Board. Over the years, it's been, well, the past few years, it hasn't been that good. And again, asking this question, as the Board of Supervisors, what would you do to improve it, and how would you sustain that?
Me, I would start having town hall meetings with the teachers and the people in the Griffis-Widewater and ask them what they want. Teachers, how do you want us to help you out? And if it makes sense, then I would take it back to the board and say, well, my constituents said that this is what needs to be done. I would have open conversation with the parents. As the NAACP Legal Redress chairman for the last 4 years, I heard some of the problems that the school had and some of the issues that they have, and they would come to us and say, what can we do? Well, you guys have to go out, you've got to vote, and you have to get people who's going to be able to communicate with you to solve these issues. Our school is a very good school, but I think that we've lost some of the basic touches of meeting the people, talking to the people, and making sure that we are in touch with the current issues versus wait until something happens and then we try to solve the problem instead of trying to go out there and be proactive and eliminate the problem before it starts. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that answer. Jack, your turn.
Well, whenever I was chairman last year, what I initiated was a meeting every month between chairs and vice chairs, along with the superintendent and the county administrator. And just having a small sit-down informal meeting to discuss relevant issues. It's kind of, we could discuss frankly what we could do about things. And that seemed to be a good first step, because then I also reinitiated the superintendent report to the board supervisor, whereas my previous board chair had discontinued that practice. And it's very nice to have the superintendent come over, and Dr. Benson is a wonderful guy. He is probably the best superintendent. I've seen 7 now, since I've been in office in Stafford. He's by far the best superintendent I've seen. He will get things done. But we also instructed our county staff to work with their counterparts on the school board. And I think that's going to even go a step further when we start doing these shared services in specific arenas, whereas people will have to work together, whether it be, just doing financials, budget, those kind of things, but it's going to help us in the long run. But the most important thing is relationships, and a lot of times I've always had a good relationship with my school board counterpart in Griffis-Widewater. Sometimes that always isn't true, and that's a must-have. And so if everybody had good relationships, I think the boards would have a better relationship. So I think that's where we need to go. Thank you.
I'll start back with you, Jack, on this one. The real concern about Stafford County Public Schools and their ability to keep and maintain their teacher staffs. Competitive salaries being one of the major issues, and particularly for starting teachers. We used to have some of the best salary structures in the area. We don't have that anymore. How do you think that the school system should go about addressing this, and how, as a member of the Board of Supervisors, would you promote that?
Well, we were making significant progress above and beyond national and statewide averages when I left the board in the end of 2007. However, that's exactly when the recession, depression, whatever you want to call it here, happened. And there were very lean times in county government. And a lot of those years, there was 0 raises given. And if you do a 0 raise and surrounding counties do 1 or 2% even, that compounds over time in terms of people's salaries. And so we fell behind even Spotsylvania County. And Stafford should not be behind Spotsylvania County. Now, the new superintendent has a plan, and he started this last year. And what he did was take away the old yearly step principle for all school employees. It's still in place for teachers, but he did compress the numbers such that most of the raises were at the beginning where we have the problem, so that the starting teacher salaries in Stafford are now $40,000. And we also now give a stipend to those new teachers when they come on board, like straight out of college, for instance, and they're not paid. They don't get their first paycheck until sometime in October. That's all changed now. We do an interim payment. That's a stipend almost on top of what their salary is. So those were good first steps. I think we're going to continue to see more of those. I think you're going to see possibly other school employees put into a more merit-based pay type of scenario where they're actually judged on how they perform more so than the teachers. The teachers right now, I think, are staying in the yearly step category. But Dr. Benson has a great plan. I support him 100%.
Thank you, Jack. Bill?
I believe that we do have to work with the superintendent. It's our job to work with the superintendent to try to get the best quality person that we can. And then we have to keep our qualified people, once we get them into our school system, to maintain them with our pay. I think that us, Stafford being one of the most affluent counties, it's a shame to say that we can't keep teachers because our pay is too low compared to other counties around us. That's a failure with not only with the school board, it's a failure with supervisors for not insisting on keeping our level of schools and our teachers at a level that makes a difference. The reason why I say that is because now we see the symptoms of not having the appropriate type or having new students or new teachers in here. Our classrooms are filled. Our more senior teachers are leaving to get better jobs after they're trained. And I think nowadays, and hopefully the superintendent has addressed some of this, but again, we have to look at what caused it before. And it was the lack of management at the school board level. That maybe that's why we got a new school board president, superintendent now. And it's some of our responsibilities for not insisting that we keep our levels the way we are. So how do we do that? We become more competitive. We have to start giving the teachers the appropriate keep.
Thank you very much, Mel, for that answer. Appreciate it. Next question isn't about schools. It's about the airport. And in this case, its future. I'd like to hear your opinion on the airport in general, its expansion. Then also talk about compatible land use. A recent proposal to develop an overlay of sorts for compatible land use was turned down by the Board of Supervisors. Curious what your opinion on that. And if we could just ask you to express your thoughts about the airport in the future.
Most metropolitans, most big cities have some type of airport to not only bring in revenue, attract commercial-based companies that use or rely on the airport, maybe through freight or charters or stuff like that. So I think it's very important for us to have the use of the airport, and we should support the expansion as much as possible. Now, the overlay or the plan is a must-to-have. I think if I remember reading some of the newspaper articles and stuff, that it was rejected by the Board of Supervisors without having a real clear guide of what they expect the Planning Commission or the planners to look for and how to adjust some of the things that need to be addressed for the Board of Supervisors to say, okay. You can't have an airport, you can't have commercial building, you can't have residential building without having a guideline that everybody knows to expect when they go into that. And we pay planners to do that. But they go with us as our advice as Board of Supervisors. So let's make sure, if we're going to reject it, make sure that we give them the guidance of what we're looking for that area, instead of just saying, no, start over, and then try again.
Thank you very much, Bill. Jack?
First of all, I just want to go on record that I fully support the airport and its operations. I think that, you know, we're talking about a couple different things in terms of land use around the airport, because That's different from the airport operation in and of itself. The airport authority, who are appointed members from Stafford, from Prince William, and from Fredericksburg, it's their job to run the airport. And they've done a nice job. We have a brand new terminal down there. There's a government building down there that does some operations. It really is starting to bloom right now. And that's what we envisioned after basically a double-wide trailer, I think maybe it was a triple-wide trailer there initially, that housed the offices and the terminal building. But we've come a long way. And it hasn't been a short time, because all of these things take time. But mostly it's federal funding that's involved with the airport. And so Stafford's participation rate is not that great, but we do have to be careful and sensitive to our neighbors who live around there. And after we turned back the land use plan to the Planning Commission, which they are now revising, and it will be revisited once some tweaks are made to it, I believe. And I think it will pass, hopefully the next time. But there was a town hall meeting held down there, and a lot of new facts came out because of that, and concerns from the residents who lived in the direct proximity of the airport and the runway and the planned expansion down there. So those kind of things hadn't heretofore been discussed. And so it was very eye-opening to hear a lot of those issues. I think that in the end, we're all going to come up with a plan that works, that works for the airport and its success in economic development for the county, as well as being a good neighbor to the residents who live in that area.
Thank you very much, Jack. That's a good answer there. I want to shift a little bit and talk about a problem that's been very serious in our community. We had the sheriff of Spotsylvania and Stafford on our show about 6 months ago talking about heroin and its epidemic. And both of the officers expressed their view that perhaps the best way to deal with the heroin epidemic was not in jail, but in programs and resources outside of the prison environment. Mainly once somebody gets out of jail, keeping them off heroin. That means a local government commitment of some kind. In principle, at least, specific, if you could draw to it, would you support that kind of initiative? Yeah.
Well, I personally have been to 3 young people's funerals in this county in the last year. And they died of heroin overdoses. And it's a very, very tragic thing. 2 of those kids I knew very well. I say kids, very, very young adults. They were friends with my children. Went to school. One of them from preschool on. One I coached soccer. Just a wonderful kid. Just a real shame that this has happened. And I think there's a stigma attached to even the reporting of this nowadays. You read the obituaries and they don't mention what happened. And I think it's time that we surface this issue, because it is here. It is right here in Stafford County, and people are dying because heroin isn't like a lot of the other things. Heroin will kill you. It doesn't make any difference if you're taking it one time or several. It eventually will kill you. So it's very serious. I would support the sheriff's office, and I know there's task force, and I know there's different initiatives that have come up lately, because this is not just a Stafford problem. It's a national epidemic right now. And these are kids, our neighbors. These are our friends who are dying because of this. So anything that we can do to solve this problem, I would support 100%.
Thank you very much, Jack. Nope.
This is a no-brainer. Of course, we are going to support the police officers in their fight against not only heroin, meth, and any other drug that comes into Stafford. And we should have some programs, not only putting a heroin addict into jail. It's not going to work, because he's still going to be an addict when he's in there. You have to have some type of curriculum that's going to allow them to get off this very addictive drug, because the end result is death. And not only does death with a young person affect his sister, it affects the community as well. It's a shame that in this type of modern society, the old type of drugs are coming back in our community, and there shouldn't be that shouldn't happen. So into the final answer, or the way I'm going to say it is basically, I agree that we should do whatever it takes to support the police officers to combat this, and we should have some type of communities outreach to actually help the young men and women who get caught into this very addictive drug.
Thank you very much, Bill. This is our last question, I believe, and it concerns fire and rescue. And last year, there were 23,000 calls to the fire department for emergency services. And as we're growing, the mix in our departments is changing. There are so many volunteers, but we're having to hire more professionals. Counties having to bear more costs for equipment and stations. How do you see this developing? Are we gradually moving towards a more professional department with a large-scale county investment? How do you see us taking care of our fire and rescue needs in the future? Jack? Bill, sorry.
Saw that, Jack.
No, they don't want to keep track of simple things.
You want to get my tag on it. I think that any major county like we are becoming is going to have to go in from volunteer to professional. It just makes sense. And how do we support the influx of people? In 99, we have about 70,000 people. We take a couple. Now we're about 140,000 people and growing. So to support the influx of population like this, you need professionals. And a combination of the volunteers too. I mean, we are a community, we work together, and it needs to be done. So do we need more professional? It makes sense that as our population grows, we're going to need more support for the professionals to combat this type of accidents or incidents that happen. Yes.
Well, about a decade ago, I guess, when we finally hired our first professional fire chief in Stafford County. And that was a big deal because at the time, we had a lot of pushback from the volunteer organizations at that time, which we really loved having them and still do. Fact of the matter is, the brutal truth is, volunteerism is down, and it's down drastically in both this county and nationwide. And we don't see a turnaround anytime in the near future, which means we have to devote more and more resources to fire and rescue, to public safety here. Because while we do have good volunteers who augment the force, the career people are the ones that we must hire for our public safety needs, because these people are all now, and we've done some economies here in that we cross-train them. Not only they're not just firemen, and they're not just medics, EMS, they're both. They get a little training on each side of the coin here, so that when they go out, we may not have the right mix of people in the station when the call comes in to go out. So hopefully the people that we have are cross-trained in both categories so that they can adjust to whatever situation is out there. And we've been fortunate so far in that, we've tried to get our response times down to the golden 8 minutes. That's tough to do, particularly in the more rural areas of the county, Widewater in particular. We have Company 3 out there that is pretty much all volunteer at this time. We have Potomac Hills that is mostly career, and we have Aquia Harbor. That's a good mix right there. So we have a good force. We just need to keep enhancing it.
Thank you, Jack, and thank you both. I'll turn back over to Tom.
All right, and we need to enhance this by having a short break, and we will come back with closing statements. So come right back.